Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. I wanted to come to you here before March to discuss the upcoming ban list. I think that this ban list has the potential for being huge. A lot of people predicted the last ban list to be huge, and I think that there were definitely some substantial moves on there. But people were calling for Dragon Link to get hit, they were calling for Misk to get hit. And it was very interesting to see how those decks, without getting hit on the ban list, fell out of meta relevance a little bit. They're not the top tier decks because of Drytron and because the meta shifted to more of a control meta with BFD and stuff like that. So what I want to talk about is the upcoming sets in conjunction with that, and what I think Konami will do, as well as what I think would drastically impact the game. So let's go ahead and jump right into this, but only after you smash the like button down there and subscribe to the page, so that way you can continue seeing some of this content and we can keep having these discussions. So like I said, we'll just jump right into this. I think I'm going to do it CMO style for this first one, and I'm just going to talk to you and point and have cards come up all over the place. Card. But the first thing I want to talk to you about is the bans. What do I think will get hit from what do I think that's getting played now that will be banned? And we all know it. It's the king of all calamities, VFD. Yes, VFD. I think VFD will get hit pretty hard. I think that it'll outright get banned at first. It might come back to one later, but I think that this card is just a little bit too format warping. When you're playing virtual world and you can turbo out multiple VFDs, that's just unheard of, and that's just a little bit too ridiculous. When you have a card that can stop players from playing the game and you have decks that can get multiple of them out in a duel, it's a little bit absurd. So instead of having that in our format, I think that should get thrown out, so that way some other decks can flourish other than things like virtual world. And maybe I don't know, obviously there's not this whole which format is better, control or combo, but I wonder if there's some like middle ground, some hybrid type decks that'll flourish if we get rid of VFD, where they can work with the control format but also actually still make their plays without getting stopped by cards like VFD. And I think off the top of my head, that's the only card that I think will get outright banned on this list. I don't think there are any cards that really need hit aside from that. So what we'll move to now is the limit section, and this includes cards that are both going to move off the ban list to the limit list, so they'll actually get added back, as well as cards that will be at full power and get hacked down to 1. So I think that we'll start at cards that are at full power and get hacked down to 1, and then we'll go the other way. So the first card that I think will get hacked down to 1 is BENTEN. If you haven't been watching Drytron, I don't know what you're doing. And if you don't know what BENTEN does, you really just need to go watch Drytron abuse the hell out of it, because it just recycles cards like a champion in that deck. And it really is the stimulant for that deck. But the deck still is playable and very competitive with one BENTEN. Because it's searchable off other cards, because it can recur itself from the graveyard. So just keep in mind that limiting it to 1 will reduce the consistency of Drytron, which is why it's so powerful, as well as all the control stuff, but it won't make the deck unplayable. So that's why I think that it'll get limited, and especially with the Xyz card coming out in Lightning Overdrive later this year, I think that limiting BENTEN and then adding that card into Drytrons will still keep the deck at a very, very relevant and powerful level. But having 3 BENTEN plus the Xyz card would just be absolutely absurdly broken. So I think that this is probably the best course of action, and if it's still absurdly broken with 1 BENTEN, then maybe we'll discuss banning it, but I don't think that it'll need banned, just limit. The other big one, in my opinion, that needs limited is Red Eyes Fusion. Yes, Red Eyes Fusion is searchable, and most decks that throw in the Dragoon engine just use Red Eyes Fusion to, you use Anaconda, then you search your and use your Red Eyes Fusion to get out your Dragoon. So they mostly only play one anyway. They'll play one Red Eyes Fusion, one Red Eyes, and one Dark Magician just to get to Dragoon, which is still really powerful. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of outs to Dragoon. It's not as good as the hype would make it seem like, but there's no reason that there should be decks where I'm like, Dragoon number 1, Dragoon number 2, and I'm playing 3 Red Eyes Fusion, and I can just turbo Red Eyes Fusion after Red Eyes Fusion, turn after turn, and build this board of multiple, Red Eyes Dragoons. And there's other good fusion cards, like other good Red Eyes Fusion cards that will get hurt by this, but until you do something about Dragoon, it's going to continue to dominate. And this is just one way to reduce the consistency of specifically Dragoon Turbo decks, which are just annoying as hell. The other card that kind of needs hit is Misk. Yes, Miscellaneous Saurus. Have you read Misk? Because if you haven't, you should, and if you have, then you know what I'm talking about, because it's just insane. Hand trap protection, play starting, searching, all kinds of shit just in one card. So I think that Misk up here needs knocked down to just 1 to reduce the consistency of Dino decks. Now, I know the Dino players will be pissy because the deck itself actually isn't like a top tier deck right now, but it's still super consistent, super competitive, super strong. It is a fun deck to play. I actually do play it, and I don't, I would love to have Misk at 3 while I'm playing my Dino deck, but also I can definitely understand why such a powerful card should be hit. So I think that that is a totally reasonable prediction and a totally reasonable request for non-Dino players. Now we'll talk about some cards that will probably move from being banned to being back on the limit list, so that way we can actually play them again. And the first one that I want to mention is Electromite. Electromite is a super powerful card to enable some combos in a Pendulum deck. And so Pendulum players will love having Electromite back. And Pendulums are like really irrelevant right now as far as meta. If you watch some of the recent tier lists made by other Yu-Gi tubers, the Pendulum decks are usually not even mentioned. So if you want Pendulums to be relevant again, if you're Konami and you want to sell Pendulum cards, you kind of need to bring back some Pendulum support. So bringing back Electromite at 1 will help with that. And also, if you bring back Electromite now, the Metal Foes is getting some support in upcoming sets. I think in Blazing Vortex and maybe in Lightning Overdrive, I can't remember. But to facilitate people buying those sets for the Metal Foes support, having that one of the best Metal Foes cards in Electromite be back in the game will help sell those cards as well. And maybe people will start building Metal Foes decks. That would be something interesting to see. Maybe something we'll bring to the page later. Now we get into, I think that will happen. Now we're getting into stuff that like might happen. And I'm not getting my hopes up for some of these, but I think that the discussion needs to be had as to why they could come back. The first being Harp Horror. ORCUST Harp Horror is a excellent enabler for it's a searcher for the ORCUST deck, and the ORCUST deck has not been seeing that much play recently. I think bringing Harp Horror back to 1 will help with the consistency of that deck, and maybe make it meta relevant again. Obviously, maybe not necessarily in a format where it's so control heavy, but as we facilitate some of these combo decks coming back, it could actually bring it back up to the top, or bring it back into play at least. So that's a card that I think could come back without any drastic changes. The next card, and this goes along with the Pendulum support again, is ASTROGRAPH Sorcerer. I think that could come back to 1. It's another searcher, combo enabler, extender type card. You can definitely bring that back to 1 and facilitate Pendulum again. if you brought back Electromite and ASTROGRAPH Sorcerer, I think that Pendulums will definitely see a lot more play, and I think that that's something that, you know, there are some people who like Pendulums a lot. Pen's back stack! But I have a Pendulum deck. It's fun to play with. It's definitely interesting because of the extra summoning mechanic that most decks don't take advantage of. But like I said, they've been irrelevant recently because it's so hard to work around all these control styles, and especially when Konami has hit some of your best extenders and enablers. So I wouldn't be surprised if Electromite and ASTROGRAPH Sorcerer both come back to 1. Now we get into the I'm really not sure about these, but I think that they could come back to 1. Is the first being Mirage Stalio. Salamangreat Mirage Stalio is part of the classic Salamangreat combo, and in an effort to, you know, knock down Salamangreats, they ban Mirage Stalio. But now in this format, even though we're control and Salamangreat is one of the best control hybrid type decks, we're not seeing it see play as much. Yes, it's still a good deck without Mirage Stalio, but having one Mirage Stalio really enables a lot more combos, which builds up more of your negates and lets you get more of your effects and more of your monsters on board. So I think that bringing one Mirage Stalio back will re-spark, it's fire type deck, rekindle the flame of Salamangreats a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if that comes back, if not in March, you know, with the next ban list or something, especially if the format starts shifting again. I wouldn't be surprised if Salamangreat's Mirage Stalio comes off the list. The next one is Engage for Sky Strikers. I know everybody who plays against Sky Strikers says absolutely no Engage, we don't need a +3, but us Sky Striker players, please bring back Engage. I actually started back playing again after the January ban list of last year when Engage was banned, so I never actually got to play Sky Strikers with Engage, but I love my Sky Strikers deck, so I would love to see it, you know, at full power essentially. And on top of me personally, Sky Strikers hasn't been seeing that play. You know, it is one of those decks that has a little bit of a cult following and has, you know, significant strength, has a lot of cards, and we've slowly seen, you know, Sky Striker cards come back. We got Widow Anchor back to 3, things like that. So I wouldn't at all be surprised if we see Engaged come off the ban list at 1, just to spark up some Sky Striker support, some hype for Sky Strikers, and maybe we'll see it come back into the meta a little bit. In this control format, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, especially we're so focused on monster effects. It wouldn't be super surprised if we saw a deck focused with spells come into the meta. The last thing, and this was a suggestion from my friend Ghost, so I'm not 100% sure if I'm on board with this, but Vanity's Emptiness. Vanity's Emptiness could come back to 1, and the logic behind this is there are a lot of outs for that right now. There are a lot of spell and trap removal, so it wouldn't be that big of a deal to have it at 1. You know, you slam it down, maybe you foil your opponent, maybe they have an out for it real quick and it's no big deal. It's one of those cards that once you know your opponent's playing, you side in for spell and trap removal kind of thing. But especially in a control format, and like if you're playing the Vanity's Herald's version of Drytron or something, having that extra trap in there could, you know, stall your opponent, help you get through another turn, things like that. Very powerful card. It prevents both players from special summoning, so it is important to remember that, like, while it is really good because it's a trap, so you activate on your opponent's turn, they can't special summon, and you already essentially have set up your board, it also impacts you on your follow-up turn. So if you are going to play, if it does come back, just keep that in mind when you're building your decks. But that's it for the limit list. Next we'll go to the semi-limited. I kind of agree with Simo in the fact that the semi-limited list is a little bit irrelevant. If you're going to make it 2, if you're going to bump it from 1 to 2, go ahead and just make it 3. And if you're at 3 and you're going to make it 2, go ahead and just make it 1. 2 is kind of like we don't really want to piss people off about switching it one way or another, so we're going to put it in semi-limited. It does, impact your ability to see it on draw and stuff like that, but overall I think that it's like, meh. And after talking to Ghost again, some of these, number one's Called by the Grave. It does not need to be limited in a format that's so control heavy with no combo. Give the combo decks some life. Give them a Called by the Grave. Give them one more Called by the Grave. Realistically, that could even come back to 3 in my opinion. It was at 3 before, and Called by the Grave goes up and down. It just depends on the format, depends on if people are playing combo or not, as to how overpowered Called by the Grave is. So I wouldn't be surprised if that comes off as semi-limited or even full power. Other cards getting hit to 2 from 3 could possibly include cards like Cursed Eldland or Scarlet Sanguine in an Eldritch deck. And this would just be predicated on the idea that those decks are so consistent, and getting those cards are just insane. So if we can limit those just a little bit to limit the Eldritch deck competitiveness, the consistency, I mean, that would help other decks fare against those decks. And on that same note, hitting NADIR Servant from 3 to 2 could limit the consistency of Dogmatica based decks a lot. I don't think that will happen because Dogmatica is not that strong at the moment. I mean, it is. It's kind of at the same tier as Eldritch in my opinion, but I think that I'm fine with leaving NADIR Servant to 3 until the meta shifts, or until Dogmatica is just like a blowout engine or something. But for the most part, I have no issues with NADIR Servant being at 3. But with it at 2, you would just decrease that consistency in getting your search and getting the Dogmatica engine out. The card's also still fairly new. It came out when Rise and Duelist, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments below. But so I really don't see it getting hit, not until it gets reprinted or something. But the last card actually coming up from the limited list, and this is another suggestion from Ghost, is Rusty Bardiche. And I saw that, and at first I was like, but why would you move that up? And then I thought about it, and I realized that, Phantom Knights and Burning Abyss haven't really seen all that much extra play. I mean, they have. Since Seer and Graph came back to 3, Burning Abyss has seen some competitive play. It's one of the better control decks. But with Drytron and Virtual World dominating the format, Burning Abyss hasn't been the star. I know a lot of people thought like, oh, we get Graph and Seer back to 3 and Burning Abyss is going to be the best control deck of the format. And as it turned out, not so much right now. So bringing Rusty Bardiche back to 2 gives Phantom Knights, Burning Abyss type of deck a little bit extra searchability, a little extra consistency, and that extra power. Now, in general, Rusty Bardiche is super powerful, and I wouldn't be surprised if we bring it back to 2, and then Burning Abyss, Phantom Knights decks are super strong, and the meta shifts, and they're on top, and then Rusty Bardiche goes back down to 1, or even ban. I wouldn't be surprised. So keep your eyes out for that. That's a roller coaster ride that I wouldn't be surprised by. But I think that's about all I have for now. If there's anything else that you think I forgot, if there's anything else that you would add to any of these lists, let me know down in the comments. I appreciate your feedback. I want to learn as much as I want to help you understand what's happening in the meta right now. So let me know in the comments what I'm missing, what you think I could add. I'm gonna post my Banlist predictions over on Instagram as well, so keep your eyes out for that. And thanks for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe to the page as well, so that way you can keep up with some of this content. And thank you all for joining me, and have a wonderful day.